Assemblyman Gerry Scharfenberger, a Republican representing the 13th Legislative District in Monmouth County. Assemblyman, welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Thanks, Laura. Great to be here.
All right, let's talk a little bit of what's happening there in Monmouth County. There are proposed rules, and they're called the ONNJ Pact, P-A-C-T. So can you tell us what the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, exactly what they're proposing?
Yeah, what it is, it's a series of regulations and rule changes that would severely impact all coastal and tidal communities. And there's various parts to it. Some of the things that we find most egregious are it would limit. There would be no more development allowed on barrier islands. It would limit development to 3% on lots in these so-called inundation risk zones. It would certainly make review of permits much longer and much costlier. It would diminish the value of a lot of the properties there. So these are all things that are embodied in the regulations that DEP is proposing for these areas.
Okay, can you just also kind of set the stage for us here? When it comes to development, you don't want to overdevelop, right? We see more and more hurricanes. You want to
Absolutely.
protect the assets that you have. Can you talk a little bit about striking that balance? Because New Jersey's travel and tourism is one of the biggest economic drivers in the state. It makes billions and billions of dollars. Can you just talk a little bit about, you know, what's happening now and why these regulations are even being proposed in the first place?
Yeah, and that is true. We are very concerned with the most densely populated state in the union, and overdevelopment is a big issue from north, south, east, and west of the state. So we have to try and strike the balance. What you want to do is allow the individual municipalities and the counties at large to be able to make those decisions, to be able to have the freedom to develop as they see fit. They know best. They know best what their infrastructure can handle, what their municipal services and county services can handle. So we want those decisions to be left up to the municipalities and the counties in conjunction with the municipalities. And that's the way we feel it works best. These new regulations would overstep all of those local controls. And that's another thing that we're very concerned with.
Right, and you know, not just DEP, but you know, I've talked with other mayors and other municipalities where you see, like in Morris County, you know, the Highlands development, that they stopped development in certain open spaces, and as a result, they're having difficulty. They're having to close schools because they're not able to have smart growth. So, can you talk a little bit about how you strike a balance between smart growth and protecting what we already have in New Jersey, and also the impact that it's having in areas like yours?
Right. Well, it is a big issue, especially in my district here. Some of the bigger towns, Middletown is the biggest in the county, for example, and they've done a great job of preserving open space while trying to redevelop already developed areas. And that's really what a lot of towns like to do. If there's blighted properties that already have development, where there it already has infrastructure in place, that's where you want development to go. You don't want green fields. You don't want to clear woods to have huge developments if you can help it. And these are the things that towns, I think, by and large, have done a great job of reining in and controlling at their own pace with what they feel they can handle. What happens is when the state starts to get involved and has a one size fits all process and regulation, then it really gets out of whack. And that really takes a lot of the power out from the locals who know best.
Yeah, well, I mean, are they providing any type of formula for making the decisions that they are making? And hey, this is why we're making this decision, and based upon X, Y, and Z, here's how you can continue to do what you need to do as a local municipality, as opposed to what the state is charged to do, what the Department of Environmental Protection is seeking to do.
Well, Laura, that's the big problem. That's one of the big objections that I have is the formula and I guess what they're basing these changes on. And we find that it's very, very faulty data that they're using. They're using a 2019 Rutgers report that has already been pretty well debunked, for lack of a better term, with some of the recommendations and some of the findings. One of the findings that they're basing these new regulations on are that sea level by the year 2100 will rise over 5 feet. Now, nobody believes this. Nobody believes this. In fact, the most agreed upon numbers are 0 to 2 feet within the next 75 years, which is more reasonable. So that's something that right off the bat, when you have regulations based on faulty data like that, you have to dismiss them out of hand. We have to go back to the drawing board and get real numbers. And the other thing that we're very concerned with is that all of the affected stakeholders have not been involved in this from day one. There's a
Yeah.
comment period, but usually the regulations are in place and people are commenting on regulations that have already been settled on.
All right.
And what we think is fair is to go back to the drawing board, include all of the stakeholders, businesses, residences, local government, all of them, and get their input. They're the folks on the ground who deal with this on a daily basis. They deal with storms and flooding and whatever the case may be. So it's only fair, I think, to build these regulations, if needed at all, with input from everybody. And that's what we're calling for: better data and input from all of the stakeholders.
If the DEP, if the state doesn't engage in these conversations and they come in with what you're saying is a one-size-fits-all approach to protecting the environment, can you just talk a little bit about the potential economic implications that the regulations could have on the state's economy, on the county's economy, and the cities
Sure.
in that county?
Sure, Laura. And it's very, very dire if it really plays out the way it seems to be. And the first thing that will happen, it will devalue a lot of properties. So municipalities who collect property taxes to pay for their the expenses of the departments and services will have less money, even though they're contractually locked in, statutorily and contractually, to a certain number. So they will lose revenue right off the bat. And this will affect schools, it will affect municipalities, and will affect the county, anybody that collects part of the property tax revenue. So the other thing too is people will start to see that flood insurance will either be impossible or very expensive, if they can get it at all, to procure. And I got a call from a constituent already who was frantic and said, I was dropped by my insurance company. And the way this works is companies like insurance companies and businesses, they don't wait for the shoe to drop. They anticipate this. So they will start adjusting their business models and outlooks now based on these proposals, which may not kick in for a few years. So the good news for this one constituent, she was dropped by one insurance company and got new insurance, but $800 more a year right off the bat. So
Well,
that would be very, very expensive and very, if they can get it at all.
right, and this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So what measures are being taken to ensure residents are protected, and also
Mhm.
just the communities that are protected, businesses are protected under these new rules?
Well, what we're doing, a lot of the legislators who have impacted districts, anybody with a shore or tidal area, and this is around the state. It could be up the Delaware River, it could be down at the bay there. Certainly, it's not just Monmouth County. And what we're doing is we're reaching out. I've spoken in front of a few councils of the local mayors. I've spoken with a local mayors group. We're designing a resolution that everybody can pass. And we think the most important thing is to get the word out that this is happening. This is looming for all of us. It would devastate the economy. It would devastate the multi-billion-dollar tourism industry. And worst of all, it would impact folks who sometimes lived on the shore for 5, 6 generations or more. And this is something that we cannot allow to happen. And there is a solution. We can put our heads together, have sound data, and have common input from everybody that would come to solutions. And there are protections you can do. Listen, nobody is arguing that the climate isn't changing. Climate's been changing for millennia. This is nothing new. We just have technology that will help us to deal with it. So we have to input that technology, input all of the stakeholders' thoughts on this, and we'll come up with a solution that's fair and not devastating to all of those interests.
Can you talk a little bit more about that solution, and then keeping in mind, the NJ Pact initiative, along with aligning with federal environmental standards and policies as well? What do you see that solution looking like? Do you have some bullet points?
Yeah, well, certain things, certainly simple things like hardening the infrastructure, building dunes, building seawalls, things like that in areas that may be impacted. Now, keep in mind, Laura, one thing, we we've been down this road before. In 1989, the United Nations came out with a panicked report that if we didn't reverse global warming by the year 2000, several nations will be completely underwater. There was even a map that parts of Manhattan would be underwater. This never happened, not even close. So you can't keep coming out with this inaccurate data that goes into inaccurate recommendations and inaccurate policy. So this is something that people are very, very skittish about because they've been burned before by this sort of panicked warnings that never come to pass.
Yeah.
So we have to get that right, and then there are solutions out there for the coastal areas and certainly the tidal areas that work, have been proven in other places around the world, and we can utilize them here.
Can you talk a little bit about what's happening in Trenton? You know, you represent the 13th District, a Republican. Democrats have control of the legislature as well as the governor's office. Can you talk a little bit about how you are working with your colleagues on the other side of the aisle? Because, you know, the environment, travel and tourism, businesses, homes, you know, that's not a partisan issue. You represent people on both sides of the aisle. So can you talk a little bit about how those discussions in Trenton are going, and if people are willing to work with you on coming up with some solutions, because everybody loves going to the shore and enjoying
They do,
the shore and the
good,
restaurants and businesses and those who live there.
absolutely. And the good news is the Democrats and Republicans have been very receptive and very concerned about it. In fact, the mayor's group that I went to speak before is a Democrat mayor who's the president of it, and he invited me, and he's reached out to several folks on his side of the aisle. And this is good. It doesn't seem to be a partisan issue at all. I've seen no evidence of that, and that's why I'm very hopeful that if we can educate everybody on what's coming, what the ramifications would be, and the fact that we have to stick together and find common solutions, I think that's what's going to appeal to everybody out there on both sides of the aisle. And listen, everybody wants the best for the environment. Everybody wants the best for the economy. We may differ on how we get there. But when it comes to something like this, which is such a unifying issue, I think you're going to see people join together and really work. In fact, I'm supposed to meet with some of my colleagues from the other side of the aisle and walk them through. I've been on top of this for a little while longer, and I'm on the Environment Committee, so I have more exposure to this sort of thing. So I feel good about that part of it, that we'll be able to unite behind this and get things done.
Assemblyman, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Always good seeing you.
Good seeing you too. Thank you.
Nothing has ever been handed to me. I've had to work for it. On the field and off the field. Kane worked with me, guided me, helped me climb higher to get where I belong, to change my life.
Hey, welcome to the team.
Cougars climb higher. Kane University.
A year to go until New Jersey's 2025 gubernatorial election, the race is already heating up in what is shaping up to be one of the most competitive and closely watched contests in recent memory. Candidates from both sides of the political spectrum are hitting the campaign trail. They're releasing TV ads, mailers, and billboards. Joining us now to talk about why the 2025 governor's race is already generating so much buzz is former Jersey Legislator John Wisniewski. Good to see you. Also a former candidate for governor yourself.
Yep. Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me on. This is always an interesting topic to talk about.
Right. So why do you think it is already 2025? I know that we're always trying to get ahead here in New Jersey when it's, looking ahead to the next race. But we still have all the congressional seats, U.S. Senate. But, the 2025 New Jersey governor's race, it's really active. Why?
Well, we have a presidential election, too. And the interesting thought, and I mean, from my own perspective, when I ran in 2017, I waited until after the presidential election to announce my candidacy, which in retrospect, I recognize was probably not the best thing to do because it allowed competitors to get an advantage on my fundraising and other efforts. And so I think that a lot of the candidates who are making moves now recognize that once this presidential election is over, It's going to be a full tilt effort until primary day 2025. And think about the numbers. In the 2017 election, where it was Phil Murphy, Jim Johnson, and myself as the top three finishers, there was about 500,000 votes cast. I got over 100,000 votes. Phil Murphy got over 200,000 votes. When you have a multi-candidate field with candidates who will be well-funded, Josh Gottheimer will be well-funded. He's a pretty prolific fundraiser. Sean Spiller, running for governor, former NJEA president, has the backing of that organization. He'll be well-funded. You have Steve Fulop, mayor of Jersey City. He'll be well-funded. And don't forget Steve Sweeney, former Senate president. He'll be well-funded. This is an election in which the winning candidate could very well succeed by having about 150,000 votes, which is a very small number of votes for a statewide office because of the number of candidates and that fierce competition.
Well, and it's an open primary. Governor Murphy served 2 terms. He cannot run again. You just went over, the Democrats. All of these Democrats within New Jersey circles are very well known, well respected. I mean, Josh Gottheimer, Congressman, he's not even officially announced.
No,
he's already not. But he's already getting the backing of certain mayors. And let's go ahead. I'll let you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though. So known statewide, I'm not sure any of them are known statewide, other than perhaps Steve Sweeney, who served for a good number of years as state
I should
Senate
clarify,
president.
known within New Jersey circles, known within
Right.
that political, known within the power structures within the organization.
And so Congressman Gottheimer will, as a candidate, presumably, if he's a candidate, will do very well within his congressional district. So will Congresswoman Sherrill. She'll do very well.
And again,
Steve Fulop,
she hasn't announced yet either, but
Correct.
there is quite a
Correct.
buzz about these 2 members of Congress getting into the race.
hypothetically, if she does, that will be her strong area. Steve Fulop will do very well in Jersey City, maybe reasonably well in other parts of Hudson County. Steve Sweeney will do very well across South Jersey. But the difference in this year's election is that or a 2025 election, is that there won't be a quote unquote county line the way there had been in the past, where party leaders could guarantee favored ballot position for their candidate of choice. And so that scrambles things a bit. And there is a possibility where the favored candidate, say in Bergen County, may not get the top ballot position. That makes it a little more difficult.
Right. What do you think, and I want to get to the Republican side as well, but what do you think is driving this early momentum? Is it a policy debate, pushing candidates to get into the campaign and so aggressively? Or is this a dollars and cents, all about fundraising, because we're in New Jersey in between the New York and Philadelphia market, and it costs a lot of money to run and to win?
Yeah, I wish you could say that this interest in running for governor is because of strongly held policy differences between all of the candidates. But you and I both know that that's not the reason. The reason is that Governor Murphy's term limited. There's an open seat. Politics in New Jersey is a business of trying to move to the next level, which all of these candidates are trying to do. It's about acquiring the power and the privileges of the office of governor. And so they're going to start early. They're going to, even if not announced, have things done that are all but, in appearance, actions of a candidate for governor, because they see an opportunity for themselves to elevate to the next level of political office.
So on the Republican side, you have Jack Ciattarelli. He ran, this would be his 3rd time running for governor. You've got State Senator John Bramnick. You have Bill Spadea, who hosts New Jersey 101.5 morning show. His name recognition is very, very well known. Jack Ciattarelli, this is his 3rd time running. And again, within the political circles of New Jersey, John Bramnick is quite well known and a little bit more of a moderate candidate, working well across the aisle. So can you talk a little bit about the Republican side?
Look, I know all 3 gentlemen, and they all have their respective strengths and weaknesses. Jack's I serve with in the General Assembly, as I did Senator Bramnick, and Jack is carving the lane of being the loyal Trump supporter. hoping that that ingratiates him to a large enough section of the Republican electorate to propel him over the top. John Bramnick, on the other hand, is carving out a path that makes him the thoughtful Republican, non-Trump acolyte, and he's hoping that that will carve enough of an electorate for him to succeed. And Bill Spadea, frankly, is the pro-Trump candidate on steroids, and that's a lane that he is pursuing. And I'm not expert enough to know how the Republican electorate will break that down, but if you break it down just simply on presidential preference, it seems that the candidate who aligns himself most closely with former President Trump will have the best chance at getting a majority of Republican votes, which puts them at a big disadvantage in the general election when there won't be that same kind of an electorate.
Right. I mean, in order to win the primary, you have to really rally to the base on both sides. Right goes a little bit more to the right, left goes a little bit more to the left. But then in a general campaign, you do want to be a little bit more center. Do you see anybody?
Yeah, and it's hard to make that pivot. It's hard to make that pivot in between, the primary day in June and general election, because everybody's going to remember whatever you said leading up to the primary, and it has to be somewhat reconcilable to what you say after the primary.
Yeah. Do you see any front runners emerging just of yet? I mean, again, on the Democratic side, you mentioned two names that aren't even in the race yet.
Right.
Strengths, weaknesses going into the campaign.
I think it's too early to say, and I think that given the fact that there are now 3 announced gubernatorial candidates and potentially 3 more that may get in, you may even see more people get in under the theory that it lowers the number that you need to achieve to actually get success. Remember, in a New Jersey primary, you don't need to have 50% of the vote. You just need to have the most votes of all of the people running. And if you have 5 or 6 people running, you could have a situation in which the winner wins with 29% of the vote.
Yeah. Well, and then, of the candidates you mentioned, it is early. We haven't seen people come out on policies. But again, knowing a lot of the people that there aren't necessarily big policy differences. So it's always interesting to watch these races early on, almost kind of liken it to, family fighting when, inter-party fighting with each other. How intense do you think that could get? On the Democratic side or Republican side as well. But it's, again, the field seemed to be a little bit more crowded on the Democratic side. How tough do you think that's going to get? And then how do Democrats then come together after that primary?
Yeah. Politics in New Jersey is played pretty fiercely. And I would anticipate that candidates who see someone else as a potential serious opponent are going to spend money to try to knock that candidate down. There were a lot of attack ads placed against me when I ran in 2017 by the Murphy campaign. And those came out as we approached Election Day. And so I could envision in which the candidate who has a big enough war chest, who sees somebody else as potentially a rival in terms of demographics or policy positions, to try to attack the other candidate. And with a multiple candidate field, you may see attacks going back and forth, 3 different ways.
Just final thoughts here. Do you think there could be a wild card, not necessarily in the candidate, but as we look to what happened with the party lines, with where you're placed on the ballot, how that was done away with, how that happened with Andy Kim running for Bob Menendez's former seat, is that going to impact how the primaries shake out? Because on the Republican side, they still have the county lines. Democratic side, they don't. Or is that just unknown territory still?
Well, there is a proposal in the legislature to legislatively address this issue, which I imagine will follow some version of what the court has already dictated on the Democratic side. And there's an expectation that the court will expand whatever has been done judicially to cover the Republican side. But I think that significant fact about the end of the party line as it had been in existence for decades is going to impact how each of these candidates proceed. Remember, The old school of thought in New Jersey gubernatorial politics is you assemble the county line in enough counties where you then become a dominant force, forcing other people out or to at least tacitly concede that you're the person. That's not necessarily going to happen this time. And so these candidates all will believe that they have a shot. There will be a lot of money spent. There may be other candidates who get in who see the opportunity for lightning to strike. And this is going to be a very interesting gubernatorial primary season on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, never a dull moment, not in New Jersey.
No.
John Wisniewski, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Laura, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And that will do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.
Some of the biggest challenges I face as a student athlete is managing my athletic work and my school work.
To prevent our student athletes from falling into academic distress, we created a program called Gamer. Each team works with an athletics academic liaison to increase graduation and retention rates.
The turning point that I saw is my grades went up.
What has helped me the most is definitely tutoring. My academics have just skyrocketed.
The ultimate goal is for our student athletes to have that championship moment on the field and day of graduation.